Hey there, folks. How you doing today? Welcome back to the channel. Please bear with any background racket that you might hear throughout this production. We're on location where life happens. Sometimes there's stuff going on right over there that interferes with what we're trying to do in here. Have a disclaimer on the video today. If you're sensitive to things like strobe lights, we will be demonstrating one, doing a flashlight review today. So just be aware that that's going to happen here in just a couple of minutes on the video. I'm going to tell you a story today. I like stories. I grew up hanging around with a bunch of old men, and old men tell stories, and I think sometimes telling stories is the way to get the point across. So instead of doing this like we've done reviews in the past, I'm going to tell you a story about the importance of something like this first. I don't talk about my work on this channel hardly at all. Some of you that have been following for a while know that I work in law enforcement. Otherwise, it's cloaked in ambiguity because the department that I work for does not have a sense of humor. So with that in mind, as a law enforcement professional, I have a little different perspective on things like equipment than the average individual does. So now I'll tell you my story. Several months ago, I was making my 42-mile commute from my place of residence to my place of employment. And in doing so, I was traveling down a U.S. interstate north of Houston, Texas, at 4 in the morning. It was, I believe, if I remember right from the report, 4:06 in the morning when the events occurred. I was traveling at a high rate of speed down the interstate, probably faster than I should have been going. That's kind of irrelevant, but it's germane to my thought process. As I was traveling down the interstate, I noticed a set of headlights from a pickup truck approaching very quickly behind me. I was at first under the impression that I'm doing about 15 over, I'm fixing to get lit up. That was my thought process for a brief second. But as I was watching the headlights barrel up on me, I realized, holy cow, this guy's not stopping. And assessing the situation in real time at 80 miles an hour in the middle of the night, I swerved into the fast lane. I was in, I think the freeway where I was at was about 4 lanes wide, and I was in the inner slow lane. So I moved over because the pickup truck just kept coming and barreled right past me. As he was coming past me, he kind of veered off like he was attempting to go around me, but it would have been too little too late. If I had not reacted, he would have rear-ended my pickup truck. So at this point, again, keep in mind my training and things that I've observed throughout my career, like, holy cow, this guy's drunk. I'm watching him, and he kind of looked like a bowling ball running down the outside edge of a lane, and then he came back into the road in front of me. There was another vehicle about 100 yards ahead of me when the events started to occur. Remember, I was going kind of fast, so I was catching up to that vehicle. This guy was going faster than me, and he caught up to it before I did. The guy in the pickup truck proceeded to tag the rear end of the vehicle in front of me. He clipped it on the corner, kind of like a pit maneuver style clip. Put that poor lady's vehicle into the center barricade, and now it's bouncing back in front of me as I'm trying to stop my vehicle, which was going at a high rate of speed also. So there I was in the middle of the night, 4 o'clock in the morning. There's no ambient light really to speak of. You could kind of make out a silhouette if it was 20 or 30 yards in front of you, but barely. Really dark stretch of highway, and there's a disabled vehicle sideways in front of me, blocking 3 of the 4 lanes of the highway. So I got out of my truck. I took my Surefire G2 flashlight out of my pocket. This is the Pro version. I think it's got a low mode, and then it goes to a high mode. The batteries are getting low on that one. I apologize. But I took this flashlight out of my pocket. I put it on the brightest mode, and I started flagging it down like this while I was making a 911 call to alert emergency services that there had just been an accident in the middle of the freeway. In the meantime, I'm trying to look in windows of the car. The vehicle that was hit was a Hummer H2. I'll put up a picture of one here so you can kind of get an idea. Huge rims, blacked out windows. I couldn't see anybody inside of it, but it was smashed to the windshield. The front bumper was laying in front of it. One of the wheels had come off. It was a big mess. So in the meantime, there's traffic approaching us at a high rate of speed. So I'm out there in the middle of the road, and the only lights present at the time were the tail lights of my pickup truck, the hazard lights, and my flashlight working back and forth. I didn't have a high visibility vest with me. I do now. I didn't have any road flares with me. I do now. But I didn't have an adequate flashlight with me either. I had, this is the one I normally carry at work. It's good for most things, but it didn't have like a strobe mode or something where I could really get somebody's attention. We almost got hit a couple of times before the flashing lights showed up and saved the day. So in the events that followed that, I sat back and contemplated some of the things that I should have done differently, could have done differently. And one of the things that came up was it really would have been nice to have a flashlight with a strobe mode with me that night. I'm kind of a flashlight nerd. I've got a whole series on flashlights here on the channel, stuff that I've worked on in the past. But that's what we're here to talk about today. We're here to talk about a flashlight. And while it might not have made a huge difference at the time the events occurred, I think it probably would have gone better if I would have had something like this with me as opposed to this. So what is this? This, I'm going to look at the package so I get it right, is the M&P Delta Force MS 2x CR123 flashlight made by Smith & Wesson Accessories, which is an American outdoor brand. If you're not familiar with American outdoor brands, they are the parent company of a whole host of firearm-related goods and accessories, to include Caldwell, Frankfurt Arsenal, Crimson Trace, Smith & Wesson, Thompson Center, and several other brands. I think Uncle Henry and Schrade pocket knives are in there also, but they are content sponsors here on our channel. They provided us with the secure wall that you see behind us here with all the firearms on display. So big shout out to the folks over at American Outdoor Brands for their loyal support of our channel. We couldn't do everything that we do on here without them. So that's why I was excited to test this flashlight that they provided to me. I've been doing what I do a long time, and I've kind of gone in a big circle. When I first started in my career, I scrimped and saved, and I bought additional gear as I was able to afford to better do my job. And then I kind of got to a point in my career, I went into doing a little bit more administrative work, and I was in conditions where it was no longer necessary that I carry all that gear with me. And I kind of got out of the habit of carrying it. But then I moved back in, transitioned back into a more tactical role toward the end of my career, which I'm still employed, but working towards the end. So I've gotten to where I need and carry more gear now than I did for a while, but I've become something of a minimalist. And in that, I mean, there was a point in time in my career I carried a 3-pound flashlight. Then when I got rid of the 3-pound flashlight, I carried a Streamlight Stinger HP LED with a big bell bezel on it and huge flashlight. Even though it was smaller than a Maglite, it was still a big flashlight. And then I got to the point where I was just carrying a little flashlight like this. And after carrying a small flashlight, I wouldn't go back to carrying a big one. So that was one of the things I really liked about this one, is its size proximity to the one that I already carried. But if I already carried this one, what would interest me in this one? The Surefire 6P or the G2, depending on if you have the metal or the polymer body, is a flashlight that runs off of two CR123 batteries. Most of them have either a single tactical mode like this one, which is bright and it's only bright, which is good for certain things. Then you have this one here, which is dim and then bright. And then they make one that's reversed, that's bright and then dim, depending on your individual preference and needs. You know, you want a bright flashlight when you're trying to blind or disorient somebody or identify something that's at a long distance away from you. You want a low beam if you're trying to identify something maybe against a white wall in the middle of the night, or if you drop your car keys or something like that. So those modes are nice to have. This flashlight has not only the high mode and the low mode, but it also has a strobe mode. Now, what would you use a strobe mode for? Well, from my perspective, there's two main reasons you might want one. One of those would be to blind or disorient someone. Where would that be useful? If you're working alone in a warehouse and there's not supposed to be somebody else there and you hear somebody moving something around the corner, you might want to get the jump on them with your flashlight, you know, and make that positive identification so you know what happens next. It might just be a stock boy that forgot to do something, so he came back after the shop had closed to put something up. Or it could be, you know, somebody trying to liberate you of your goods or wares. You know, if you're making a night deposit, you work at the local convenience store or a tavern or, you know, some kind of business that's open late, and you get off and you got the bag with you. You know, it's nice to have something that you can use to take the high ground or the advantage in a situation that might require some type of force. The other benefit to having a strobe light, and it goes back to the story that I told at the beginning of this video, is that you might be out somewhere where you really need to get somebody's attention. If I'm on the side of the road in the middle of the night trying to get somebody's attention, and I've got a bright flashlight and I'm waving it back and forth, hopefully they'll see me. If I'm in the same situation and I've got a flashlight in strobe mode, they're going to see me. That strobe light is going to get their attention. So that would be a good use for something like that. So is this the only flashlight available that has that? No, certainly not. Is it a good flashlight? Well, I've been carrying it around and playing with it for about a week now, just trying to get a feel for it. And I would tell you, yes, it's a good flashlight. I haven't had any issues with it to date. And I'm going to go ahead and read you the specs. It's 5.4 inches long. The head diameter is 1.4 inches. The weight with batteries is 5.86 ounces. The batteries that it requires are two CR123 batteries. Those are really good batteries. If you get the lithium ones that you know, the disposable type, they're super bright and they last a long time, both in the flashlight as well as on the shelf. You can store those batteries for a good 10 years and they will still work. I know this. Regardless, with that being said, I'm running rechargeable security camera batteries in this now. That's what I run in all of my flashlights that take CR123 batteries. I'll never go back to using the disposable ones for everyday use. More on that later. This flashlight features a high, low, strobe, and momentary on mode. The high mode is 1050 lumens. The runtime on high with the supplied lithium CR123 batteries is an hour and 25 minutes. On low, it is 35 lumens and has a runtime of 40 hours, 40 minutes. Memory retention feature remembers your last setting. That's really cool. So a lot of flashlights like this have modes that they run through. You have, hold on, let's see, the strobe, high, low, strobe, high, low. But you have to click through the modes to get to the one you want. Whereas with this flashlight, if you activate it and then release the button for more than 1 second and reactivate it, it will go right back into the same mode that it was in when you released the button. So if you're working traffic control and you have it in strobe mode to get people's attention, and that was the last thing you used, when you pick it up and fire it again, it's going to be in the same mode. If you head it on high because you're doing some kind of search and you turn it off for a second and then you turn it back on, it's going to be in the same mode. It takes a little bit of practice to get used to running through the modes, because if you double tap it, you'll wind up switching from the low mode to the strobe, or from the strobe mode to the high, or so on and so forth. It's easy to click through them, but just know that all of the controls are handled by the tail switch, and it does have that memory to go back into whatever mode you had used it in last. I think that's a really nice feature. Let's see here. Perfect for carrying in a backpack. I wouldn't know, I haven't carried it in a backpack, but I do know that quite often I wear these kind of tactical pants that have a little knife or flashlight pocket on the side, and it fits right into one of those. The light features a Cree brand XPL LED. It is extremely bright. The technology with these things has gotten better and better over the past couple of years. Anybody that has a smartphone in their pocket knows that the new one that they have works better than the last one that they have. Technology in this format is progressing. Lights are way ahead of where they were 5 or 10 years ago. Constructed from anodized aluminum, has a tail cap on-off switch. It has a little loop on it. It has a little wire thing that you could use to attach it to your wrist as a lanyard. Not a fan of that, given my role in life. I don't want something looped around my wrist if I have to go hands-on with somebody, or if I have to do something tactically. I don't want a flashlight swinging from my wrist, so I'd rather drop it and have to go back and find it. Your mileage may vary. You might be using it around your house, you might be using it out in the woods, and you might want it tethered to you in case you drop it. So there's differences for everybody. It is an option. It's also removable, so I'll probably remove the one from this one. And then they call this a crenellated head. I think Surefire refers to theirs as a crenellated strike bezel. Basically, there's some little bumps on the head of the flashlight here if you had to use it as a weapon. If you're going to strike somebody with it, that's going to hurt. That's what they mean by that. Get rid of that now. So, what are my thoughts on this flashlight? Would I buy this one over something like this? Well, it would depend on the circumstances, but as I mentioned earlier, after surviving that scary situation back a few months ago, when in the middle of the night I'm out there fending for myself to try to get traffic to stop in the middle of the night on an accident scene without any flashing lights around, I really like that strobe mode. I wished at the time I would have had something like that with me. Of course, hindsight is 2020, and you get into modes of you get kind of sedentary. You'll be driving back and forth. You make the same commute every day, so it becomes something that you just take for granted. It's really important to know that accidents happen in the blink of an eye. You never know when they're going to pop up on you, something like that. So with that being said, yeah, traveling in the car, you're not going to catch me without a flashlight with some kind of safety or security mode like a strobe or an SOS or something like that. We'll touch more on it here in the future with a couple of others that we're going to be reviewing, but for now, absolutely, I think something like this is a great deal. Speaking of it being a great deal, MSRP is $90. I think this one was like 60. That one was like 80. So, it's price-wise, it's competitive. Also, Smith & Wesson brands frequently runs sales on stuff like that if you buy from their website. You might also find it cheaper if you went through a third party like Amazon. I'm going to show you now. I took it out to the barn loft to do some low light demonstration. I'm going to show you the modes of this flashlight, as well as I'm going to show you this one versus this one. Same size light, but you'll be able to see the difference on high output setting. It's certainly relevant that the Surefire flashlight is only rated at 600 lumens, whereas the Smith & Wesson flashlight is rated at 1,000. That becomes evident when you shine it on a wall. The technology has advanced to the point where they can cram more performance into the same size packaging here, and it runs off of the same power source. So keep that in mind. Take it for what it's worth. Hopefully you enjoyed this and you got something out of it. Maybe you didn't know that Smith & Wesson makes flashlights like this. Hopefully you will consider them. Take a look at their website and see what they've got. As far as this one, the Delta Force MS flashlight, I give it a thumbs up. I think it's a great light and a good option for somebody that needs something like this. Let me know down below what you think. We'll leave the comment section open for a little while so that you can weigh in on your opinion of this flashlight. And until next time, folks, take care. God bless.